Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, Republican and Democratic presidential candidates traditionally do not debate with each other until both parties have selected their nominees. But then there's not much that's traditional about this election. So perhaps it shouldn't be a surprise that today we learned that Donald Trump wants to debate the underdog Democratic Party challenger, Bernie Sanders. The move will further frustrate his rival frontrunner, Hillary Clinton, who wasn't invited to this particular showdown and who has plenty of her own troubles. Today, the State Department's Inspector General found that Clinton ignored clear guidance that her email setup broke agency rules and could have left government secrets vulnerable to hackers. Well, joining us to discuss these developments is Kelly Goff, a journalist and broadcaster who used to intern for Hillary Clinton. Good evening to you, Kelly Goff. Do you think...
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
I'm going to stop you. I'm not sure why you introduced me as an intern when I interned for her when I was in college 15 years ago.
I think it was really because you've got personal, rather than simply being a supporter, you're somebody that actually knows Hillary Clinton.
No, I actually don't. I interned on her campaign as a college student. So
well,
I thought I was booked to discuss my column on Bernie Sanders.
I think
but if you were looking for someone to speak for the campaign, I should probably encourage you to book someone else.
Well, we're live on television, and this is a very interesting conversation,
okay.
But I'm very happy to talk to you about this whole idea about Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton and how they approach Donald Trump,
Fabulous.
Which is really what we want to talk about. So, is there anything wrong, do you think, with Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump going head-to-head just now?
I mean, it's sort of adding to the reality show nature of this campaign. I have to be honest, though, I was under the impression I was here to discuss a column I wrote for the Daily Beast about race and Bernie Sanders. I was not aware I was here to talk about the reality show nature of Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump wanting to have a verbal wrestling match.
Well, really, we're just here for your expertise in looking from across the Atlantic at this campaign. So let's do that now.
Fabulous.
Shouldn't Hillary bite the bullet, do you think? And do the same and get some momentum going, even if she has to take on Donald Trump now, do that, get some momentum.
Yes, I mean, she has been critiquing Donald Trump in her speeches, which I think indicates that she's looking ahead to the general and not really focused on the primary anymore, since it's unrealistic that Bernie Sanders can catch up with her in the delegate count, which is ultimately what matters in who's going to become the Democratic nominee.
So, we're in a situation now where Bernie Sanders himself could actually make some traction with this kind of debate. And you're very keen, obviously, to talk about Bernie Sanders and race. And what is it in particular that you think that he's achieving?
Well, the column I wrote that I was under the impression I was here to discuss was about the level of harassment that African-American journalists like myself have faced when they've dared to criticize Bernie Sanders. And I'll be quite honest, one of the reasons I'm disappointed in how your producers chose to introduce me is one of the misconceptions that Bernie Sanders supporters have been spreading is that anyone who's critical of him must be a supporter of Hillary Clinton or paid by the Clinton campaign. And so part of the misinformation of that is that people like myself, who interned for the Clinton campaign 15 years ago when I was in college, was described as someone who was clearly a secret supporter of Hillary Clinton. And yet people like Diane Sawyer worked for President Nixon also when she was young and went on to become a very accomplished journalist whose integrity wasn't questioned. And so I was talking about my piece about how the level of insults, attacks, and derogatory claims made by Sanders supporters against female journalists and African-American journalists really spoke to a level of lacking decency, really, and a lack of civility in this campaign cycle that we haven't seen.
Why do you think, and who's actually instigating it?
Well, look, you know, one of the things I explained in my column is that it wasn't one person, it wasn't two people, it was really a coordinated effort, because I have someone who works for me who reads my mail, who reads a lot of my email, reads a lot of my social media, and really goes through it. And I was attacked so badly for about a week after I wrote several months ago that I didn't consider Bernie Sanders particularly electable, because polling shows that socialists in America have a very tough time being accepted by voters. And what I found is that the level of attacks were so bad that there were Sanders people who said on my Facebook page, please stop attacking her. And after that, one of the Sanders supporters responded in kind, she's a journalist. Anything short of violence should be acceptable.
Right.
Which
let's just take this to the last question, which I want to ask you. Is there something that Hillary Clinton can do to unite this very fractious, if you're to be believed, very fractious Democratic support?
Right.
I think obviously you've faced that yourself.
Yes. I actually think the onus is really on people like Bernie Sanders in the same way the onus is on Donald Trump to discourage violence at the rallies, at his rallies. I think the onus is on Bernie Sanders to vigorously denounce the death threats that the female Democratic official in Nevada received from many of his supporters, death threats she received, which he didn't vigorously denounce. I think the onus is really on him to say that we can disagree. You can hate Kelly Goff's writing. You can think Kelly Goff is a terrible writer. I'm sure plenty of people do. But there is a level of decency, kindness, and civility we should maintain in our democracy. That's what I think really needs to happen.
Thank you very much for joining us.
I've been getting away with it.